We have extensive coverage and analysis of the Prime Minister's announcement and what it means for the economy and Canadians. David Cochrane is the host of CBC's Power and Politics, and he leads off our coverage this hour from Ottawa. So, David, welcome, and thank you for being here with us.
No problem. It's good to see you, Hillary.
I'm hoping that you can walk us through what we heard from the Prime Minister and anything in particular that stood out to you.
Well, look, this is a pretty significant shift for the government of Canada in its approach with this. To this point, the full large-scale review and renegotiation of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement has been hovering over this in the background, set to formally begin in 2026. And sort of the more urgent focus has been on trying to get the United States to rescind these sort of arbitrary and punitive tariffs that are really hammering key sectors like lumber, the auto sector, steel, and aluminum. And, starting with former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, there was a series of countermeasures put in place. We've seen various efforts to try to appease the U.S. president on things like with a response to fentanyl, dropping the digital services tax, which was a source of some irritation in the Canada-U.S. relationship. But, the announcement today that the counter tariffs that have been applied against a range of goods under the USMCA will be dropped effective September 1. Is a step back from the so-called elbows up posture that has been in place really since the federal election. The Prime Minister made the argument today that this is matching what the U.S. has done, and when it comes to goods that are compliant under the Continental Trade Agreement, that is accurate, but it is not matching the much higher tariff rates that exist on things like steel and aluminum, which are 50% imposed by the U.S. and only 25% by Canada. And the argument has been made that even with the situation Canada is in right now, it still has the best trade deal and best trade access to the United States. That is true, but Canada is unquestionably in a worse situation than it was at the start of this year, at the time of the federal election, and on the day of the Oval Office meeting, because tariffs have only increased since then, not decreased since then. So laying out that this was necessary to sort of remove some irritants in the relationship and move things forward on the bigger picture Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade relationship. That's the justification from the Prime Minister today. And that may be a legitimate argument in the real politics of trade negotiations with a president like Donald Trump. It's going to be a difficult one in the domestic politics where this will undoubtedly be characterized as a retreat, a concession, and maybe a little bit of a surrender by the Prime Minister today.
And David, while you and I have been speaking here, we just have a press release saying that the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, will be speaking on all of this coming up at 2:30. So less than 30 minutes from now, if all of this goes ahead on schedule. So given that, I'm wondering what it is you expect to hear from the opposition on all of this while we await that announcement from Poilievre.
Well, look, so much of the trade analysis in this country has been done in hockey analogies and elbow positioning terms, and we've heard this criticism from Pierre Poilievre as he sought his re-election to the House of Commons during the by-election out in Alberta, and I suspect we'll hear more of it from him today, that this is an elbows-down capitulation by the Prime Minister, that they've given on the digital services tax, they've given on the counter tariffs, they've given, on timelines. Because you remember, Hillary, like the language today from the Prime Minister was that him and the President, who by all accounts had a good conversation yesterday, Donald Trump says that, Mark Carney says that they've agreed to intensify their discussions. Well, we heard that back in Kananaskis at the G7, where they set a 30-day sort of horizon to try to settle all of this. And here we are well past that 30-day deadline, and things are not settled. Canada is changing its position. The argument, from the government is that they need to sort of live with the short-term difficulties that exist right now to preserve that long-term access to the U.S. market, that even if it's not at zero tariff under the free trade regime that we've existed under the last number of decades, Donald Trump has been determined to disrupt that for every single trading partner the United States has on the face of the earth. And Canada remains in a more competitive position. And that, again, that's true. That is cold comfort for steel workers, auto workers, and people in softwood lumber who are getting absolutely hammered by what the U.S. is doing. So I would suspect that you will see Pierre Poilievre making those points, criticizing Mark Carney for his failure to do this, stating that this was the implicit promise of Mark Carney to Canadians in the election, and that there's been an inability by the Prime Minister in the time that he's been in power to to resolve this. Whether Canadians blame the Prime Minister for being unable to completely change the mind of a president like Donald Trump in the time that he's had, I don't know. But that is the argument that I think the opposition is going to prosecute here.
Okay, and David, things are moving fast here because we also just have a statement coming in from Ontario's Premier Doug Ford. So I'd like to read a little bit of it and then have you react to it. So it says that he spoke with the Prime Minister today after his announcement. So I'm imagining this conversation happened just in the last little while. He says, spoke with him to stress the need for an agreement with the United States that provides relief to our tariff-impacted sectors, including steel, auto, forestry, and copper. If the federal government can't achieve that, they need to hit back hard against U.S. tariffs and provide additional supports for the workers and businesses in these sectors. So I'm wondering if you can react to this and then more broadly, how you think this will impact some of the provinces, what we might hear from other premiers.
Well, Doug Ford is particularly exposed, or the economy of the province he leads here in Ontario is particularly exposed because of the steel sector and the auto sector most of all. He has been sort of the bad cop in this, in terms of like they've pulled all American liquor off of the shelves. The LCBO is the biggest bulk buyer of alcohol on the planet. And he has, loudly advocated for the dollar-for-dollar retaliation, and as big a hit as you can deliver to the U.S. economy. So the challenge here, I think, for the Prime Minister is going to be if that broad coalition of supporters that were around him in the run-up to this starts to fray and unravel over this. Like, clearly, this is not the approach Doug Ford wants Mark Carney to take, or at least that's the public posture he's adopting. But Mark Carney is the one at the negotiating table, so he has a sense of maybe what is necessary compared to what Premier Ford has. I don't know, but we're also seeing people like Lana Payne, the national president of Unifor, the largest private sector union in the country, that represents a lot of the auto workers. And she is frustrated by this. She was critical of the Prime Minister earlier this week with the Air Canada decision where they sort of ended the strike and sent it to binding arbitration. She is frustrated by this, essentially saying that this is a concession to a bully and will not hit a magical threshold of appeasement that will make all of this go away. So there is the defiance that people like Premier Ford want to see, that Lana Payne want to see, and then there is what is necessary to make progress with Donald Trump, and whether you can calibrate these things in a way that you can make progress with the United States while holding your political coalition together, not eroding the trust of Canadians who have given you a mandate to deal with this issue above all other issues, all while trying to make your economy, give it a level of resilience to the whims of what is coming out of the White House right now, because key sectors are getting hammered. The Prime Minister made the point today that the days of deeper integration with the United States, a point he's made throughout this year, they're completely over. You need to look to other avenues. And even as you engage in what really, Hillary, is an exercise in loss mitigation, just trying to reduce the harm, because there's going to be some harm out of this. It seems very clear. Donald Trump is intent on doing this. It's a tough political pill for people to swallow, and the Prime Minister is going to have to make that argument to Canadians.
A lot on his plate, to say the least.
No kidding.
David, thank you for this. As always, we really do appreciate this. That, of course, is the host of Power and Politics, David Cochrane, joining us there from Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you.